Hey guys, just wanted to do a little video here regarding immigration and the church. So, one of the main opponents that we've seen of barring immigration or enforcing any sort of immigration policy seems to be Pope Francis himself. He has stated before with Donald Trump, any man who builds walls instead of bridges is no Christian. Uh, while I can see his point, unfortunately, the world is not that black and white. Uh, we also see many other prelates saying the same thing, and the go-to response for secular media pundits when talking to Christians about immigration is what would Jesus do? So here's a few things to think about. So generally, the people who are for this illegal immigration, there's two camps. There's usually the ultra libertarian types, the classical liberals who believe that no government should have the right to tell what a citizen of the world what to do. So there's a liberty issue at stake, which the libertarians would support. And then you have the far leftists, the more sort of classical Marxist cartoon character, who want this sort of illegal immigration for whatever reason. Call it human rights, call it free movement of peoples, whatever you'd like to see. But at the end of the day, it's globalization and homogenization. Uh, so these two parties are generally what you're going to see, and these are the honest people. I don't mean this is what everybody who's pro immigration, pro illegal immigration or migration is. I don't mean that these are the only two things you can be. I mean that the only honest people who are promoting this sort of immigration, open borders immigration policy, these are the only honest people. Like, these are the two camps they go into. The most common, however, thing you're going to hear is the fake liberal. The fake liberal is your average CNN watching upper middle class class trader, we'll call them that, who are for this illegal immigration because it's either trendy, they were told to and they believe it, or more insidiously, they could want it because they own a business and they want to bring in cheap third world labor to replace the average American on the assembly line or in the grocery store, what have you. The fact of the matter is that this illegal immigration only serves the elite. Most people would say that on the left, they would say that Republicans don't want it because they're racist or whatnot. This is not true. Republicans would absolutely love to have it. You can see that. I mean, why hasn't it been fixed before Trump? And it's been an issue since the 70s. Republicans love it. They just know that the average American hates it, so they're going to spew whatever propaganda they can to get you to vote for them. I think Donald Trump's the first person to actually address it in a long time. Clinton seemed to talk about addressing it. I don't think he actually did much, but the elites are the ones who profit from this. Because what it does is when a migrant's people move into a new area from a third world country, they are willing to take any job that they could get for whatever wage they get. And this is not necessarily a bad thing. You should always be willing to work and be happy for what you have. But when you artificially allow massive amounts of third world people to come into your country for the sole purpose of replacing your labor demographics, that's depriving people of their wages, which is one of the sins that cries to heaven for vengeance. So as Catholics, we have to understand that there's no altruism involved with the average person who's pro open borders. Like I said, with the Marxist or the libertarian, there could be some altruism there. But for the average neoliberal CNN watching, wine drinking soccer mom, no. They either have their feels where they see a crying migrant baby and they say we have to open the borders now, or they have the insidious notion that they can replace their current workers with them. And while moving the factory to a different country has been the go-to response to most of this globalization effort, we see that now third world countries are starting to fight back. Third world countries are not happy with so-called free trade, and they're pretty disgusted. They're stopping countries from exporting their businesses to these third world little crap holes. Now we saw this in the 80s with Coca-Cola, when they would have union organizers murdered by hitmen. And this is a documented thing. This is not some conspiracy theory. They did it. Third world workers wanted to unionize to get better living and working conditions, and Coke said no. So you can see countries, especially in Latin and South America, who are vehemently nationalistic. They might be communists in some way, like where they nationalize industry, or they might be socialists or something like that. But they are inherently nationalistic. They want the best for their people, and they won't lie to it, and they won't lie about it, and they'll do whatever they can to get it. Since a lot of these countries are starting to have more protectionist attitudes towards their people and their workers, their economies do suffer, and it goes down. There's corruption as well. I mean, all these factors start to drive people away from their home country to come to a more prosperous first world country where they can make a new life for themselves. And you can see this in the migrants coming in from the Middle East, or so-called Middle East. I mean, that's a whole other bucket of worms. But what we're supposed to believe is the destabilization of the Middle East is what's caused this massive influx of migrants into Europe. Which is not true, but I digress. We can get into that in a different video or something. But these migrants that move from these third world countries to the first world countries are coming gleefully to work, regardless of what you're going to hear about on the news, on Fox or whatever. They're going to say that these migrants are abusing social welfare. They're taking, and I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're raping the system for all they can take. But they still are. I guarantee you. They're mowing lawns. They're fixing roofs. They're painting houses. They're if they can, they're getting into factories. It's just a simple fact of it. They're going to take as much money as they can. They're going to send it back to their families, whether that money comes from the government or the private sector. It doesn't matter to the migrant worker. He just wants to work, or he just wants money, rather. And the elites know this. The whole point of this massive immigration event is to basically to create a new working class. And by working class, I don't mean what we typically think of in the United States as like the nuclear family from the 60s. By working class, I mean a slave class. How many of these upper scale houses that are out in like West Hollywood with the fences and the liberal actors, the left-wing crazy nut jobs like Tom Cruise and what have you, how many of them have these Hispanic housemaids or Hispanic house servants? We don't want to call them house servants, we'll call them gardeners or whatnot. But how many of them have Hispanic workers rather than normal Caucasian workers that you would see in the United States? And I don't mean to be hating on any Hispanic people. I admire your work ethic, and I don't blame you one bit for doing this. But the problem is that when we have illegal immigration coming into this country in the way that it is, it's destabilizing our workforce. It's changing the demographics so rapidly that we cannot adjust to compensate for it. And the only people that are going to benefit from this replacement of labor are going to be the upper class, the 1% of the 1%, as it were. There's no altruism involved. The Republicans would love to pay less. They've always been anti-union. They've always been anti-workers' rights. Don't let them fool you. The same these days with the Democrats. They don't seem to have any concept of what the average working man goes through these days. They might have in the past, but they don't anymore. They might like to say that they do, But I've never I've never met a Democrat who worked in a steel factory with me. In a fabrication shop, no, I've never seen a Democrat. I mean, I've seen people who might vote Democrat because it's economically viable for them, but I haven't seen a hardline Democrat in a working blue collar job ever in my life. What we need to do is understand that while the elites will preach to us saying that, well, Christ would let them in, he would help them, yes, but he would not give them his bed. And we have to adopt the same line of thinking. We can't give them everything that they need to survive. We can't give them a stable environment to live in because they choose to live in these crap holes illegally, where there's gangs and drugs and human trafficking. We can't help them until they want to help themselves. And the only way they're going to help themselves is if they stay in their country and build it up the only way that they can. And that's simply to nationalize every industry that you can, that you need to, and to simply organize as a working class labor force to get what's yours, to stop the corruption in your own country, and maybe petition in the U.S. for help. I don't know. But as far as people saying that Catholicism has to be open to immigration, no, we do not. We have to be open to helping people, to be willing to lay down, some of our worldly assets to make sure that other people can live and survive. But we don't have to be defrauded of our wages, of our labor, to do it.